The first question a funeral director will ask you is, do you know what kind of arrangements you'd like to make? It seems like an easy question, but if no one close to you has died and you've never thought it through, making final arrangements for yourself or someone you love can quickly become an overwhelming financial adventure. We are very unskilled with final arrangements, but today that will change. Today, I'm going to teach you the basics of burial and cremation, so the next time you interact with a funeral director, you'll have a good idea what basic arrangements will cost. You'll know if you want to be cremated or buried, and you will learn how to gather price information without feeling embarrassed or vulnerable. So get ready to make smart choices and become an informed consumer of burial and cremation costs. Selecting a funeral home should be thought of as a major purchase. I'd like to share a few tips and tricks that will help you gather price information without feeling embarrassed or vulnerable. Let me show you how to comparison shop. You really should be a better informed consumer and collect price information. To do that, I'm going to ask you to contact at least 3 funeral homes and request a general price list. Now, funeral homes are happy to send out this information by mail, and they are required to do it by law, so it's no big deal if you call them and you ask for it. Check out the People's Memorial website. That's peoplesmemorial.org. It's a personal favorite of mine. They have excellent information on funeral home prices for Washington State. You can also take a look at which funeral homes are contracted with People's Memorial. Most of these funeral homes offer lower prices on direct cremation as well as immediate burial. It's a highly informative website. Don't wait for the death to occur before you comparison shop for a funeral home. You'll have more strength and control, plus you'll have a clearer head for business. While this is a highly emotional time, making final arrangements for a loved one, it is also one of the most major purchases that you'll make. So approach it from an educated consumer standpoint. Include your family or friends in your final arrangement plans. If you feel too nervous to call a funeral home, ask one of them to make some calls on your behalf. It'll be easier for a friend or family member to ask direct questions about pricing information. Another trick that reduces stress is to call a funeral home and act as if you're calling for a neighbor, a friend, an aunt, an uncle, whatever comes to mind. Again, it will be so much easier to ask direct financial questions and stammer around if you get nervous if you act as if you're calling on somebody else's behalf. And then finally, don't be afraid to expand your immediate area of consideration. Most funeral homes operate within a 30 to 50 mile radius without charging you more for their services. You don't have to use your neighborhood funeral home. A few extra miles may save you hundreds and possibly thousands of dollars. I called 3 funeral homes and requested a general price list for burial and cremation. I plan to review the price information and then call the most affordable funeral home. I was surprised at the price differences for essentially the same goods and services. This is what I found. Cost comparison of 3 funeral homes for direct cremation. Every funeral home has a set charge for this service. Direct cremation does not include a memorial service, embalming, or a formal viewing. The prices are drastically different depending upon which funeral home you choose, and that is why a little comparison shopping is essential. Funeral Home A charges $695. Funeral Home B charges $2,035. Funeral Home C charges $1,690. Now let's take a look at what that includes. Urns. Funeral Home A includes a hard plastic urn suitable for scattering but not display. Funeral Home B and C want you to select an urn from their showroom. Funeral home urns generally start at around $85 and go up in price. Try searching the web for urns. There are hundreds of online vendors. You'll have more choices and better values. After-hour removal charge. Most funeral homes have an overtime charge for a removal between the hours of 4:30 p.m. and 9 a.m. Funeral Home A does not pass this charge back to the family. Funeral homes B and C charge the family an additional $150. Basic cremation casket made of cardboard, included at all 3 funeral homes. Pacemaker removal prior to cremation. Funeral Home A does not charge to remove a pacemaker. Funeral Home B and C charge an additional $25. Refrigeration. Funeral homes A and B include refrigeration in their direct cremation charge. Funeral home C charges $75 a day after the first 5 days. Securing death certificates, included in the direct cremation charge for all 3 funeral homes. Funeral homes offer a one-time, 1-hour identification view of the unembalmed body. Funeral home A charges $125. Funeral homes B and C include this option in their direct cremation charge. Just so you know, very few families request this option. King County has passed a cremation tax. If you die in King County, Washington, a $50 charge will be added to your bill regardless of what funeral home you use. There are vast differences in prices for essentially the same service. That is why it is so important to do a little homework before selecting a funeral home. This slide represents a cost comparison for a burial with a simple graveside service. Like cremation, there are substantial differences in price for essentially the same products and services. A simple graveside service does not include a church service, embalming, or viewing. Funeral home A charges $1,895 for a simple graveside service. Funeral home B charges $2,350, and funeral home C charges $2,540. Embalming and formal viewing come with an additional charge. Funeral home A charges an additional $100. Funeral home B charges an additional $1,350, and funeral home C charges $525 for embalming and viewing. There are after-hour removal charges of $150 at funeral homes B and C. Refrigeration is included at funeral homes A and B. Funeral home C charges $75 a day starting on day 6. All 3 funeral homes offer obituary assistance, help with VA paperwork, and the securing of death certificates in their simple graveside service charge. Caskets are an additional charge at all funeral homes. Burial vaults and grave liners are an additional charge. Okay, we're ready to call the funeral home. So you'll want to have your questions ready. You don't need to take any notes here. All of these questions will be included in the forms section on the DVDs.
Cornell Funeral Home, this is Carlene. May I help you?
I would like to talk with someone about direct cremation.
I'd be able to answer your questions.
Okay, what do you charge for direct cremation, and could you tell me what's included in the price?
Our charge for a simple cremation is $695. That includes us going to the place of death and making the removal, sitting down and meeting with the family, filing of all the necessary paperwork with the county, and getting the permits that are required. It also includes the alternative container, which is required by law, and it includes a basic hard plastic urn. The only other charge to you would be for certified copies of the death certificate, and the state charges $20 per certified.
Okay, is there a charge for every day that the body is refrigerated before it's actually cremated?
No, we don't charge an extra fee for that. That's all included in the $695.
Okay. And if I need help with VA stuff, if I want my urn to be placed up at the National Cemetery, is there a charge for that?
No, we'd help you with all that paperwork. We would just need for you to bring in a copy of the discharge paperwork for the veteran.
Okay. And I haven't written very many obituaries. Is that something you can help me with too? And is there a charge for that?
No, we don't charge for that. We'd be happy to help you write that and also submit it to the paper that you wanted it to run in.
Oh, okay. What about a nighttime removal charge?
We don't charge anything extra for overtime removals. It doesn't matter if the death occurs in a hospital or at a home. Our charges are just the same at $695.
Oh, okay. I called around a little bit, and it seemed to me that that was a standard charge for a lot of funeral homes. That they told me it was they pay their staff overtime, so they had to charge between $150 and $250.
We do have to pay staff on going out, but we don't charge that to the family. It's our standard rate at $695.
Oh, wow. It's all kind of surprising. I do have a pacemaker, and so
I'm wondering what the charge is to remove that. Naturally, there would be a charge.
Well, we don't charge for that, and you're correct. That would have to be removed in the case of a cremation, but we remove that prior to the cremation being done, and there's no charge to have that taken out.
I know it sounds a little nuts, but I think I heard batteries explode or it causes damage or something.
Yes. Because of the battery in the pacemaker with the heat that happens during a cremation, that is exactly right. It would explode and cause damage to the equipment, so that is why it needs to be removed.
Okay. Certified copies of the death certificate. Do you know how much those are and what I would need them for?
Places that are going to ask you for actual certifieds or any life insurance policies that you're going to make a claim against, any personal property that's only in the name of the deceased where a title needs to be transferred, you would need a certified. Again, if you had any stocks or special accounts through a stockbroker that is only in your name, they would ask for a certified to transfer the stock. Most other places would take photocopies, and when you make your initial order, the state does charge $20 per certified. If you need any additionals, you just phone us, and they're the same price of $20 each, and we can get additionals if it's in Pierce County within 24 hours. King County usually takes a couple of days, but we can get additionals as well from them.
So that's not even a charge for your funeral home. That's just something that is a direct county charge?
Yes. The $20 is what the state charges. We don't charge any additional on top of our fees to get those for you.
Okay. So from start to finish, say I pass away and you come out and make the removal, how long does it take to go from that to picking up the urn and death certificates?
Well, just so you kind of know the process, once we make the removal, the next business day is when I start the work with the doctor in processing of the death certificate. A doctor can take anywhere from 24 to 72 hours to sign off on a death certificate. Once we receive that back here at the funeral home, then I file it with the county to get the permit that's required. That, along with the authorization that a family member signs, then we have permission to do the cremation. Then I get in line at the crematory. It's usually 2 to 3 days before I get the urn back. So usually from start to finish, it's about a 6 to 7 day process.
If I choose to use your funeral home, how and when would I be expected to pay for this?
We usually accept payment at the time of making the arrangements, but if you can't do that, then we would just ask for payment once the cremation has been completed. So it's either when we sit down initially or about a week later. If you have a life insurance policy that you wanted to use to make payment, we would help you with that paperwork. We do what they call an assignment form, and the insurance company would pay us directly for the charges.
Okay. I know you have a price list of some kind. Can you?
I'd be happy to mail that to you.
Great.
Yes, just give me your name and address, and I'd be happy to mail you a price list, and I can also mail you a brochure. And then with any questions from that, you could just give us a call back.
Okay, great. You have been very, very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Washington State requires written authorization before a cremation can occur. You can authorize your own cremation prior to your death. If you grant power of attorney to a friend or relative, they can sign an authorization prior to your death, but it is important to remember that power of attorney is not valid once the person who has granted it dies. Cremation authorization can quickly become an awkward family event. Without prior authorization, responsibility transfers to the legal next of kin at death. Legal next of kin would be your surviving spouse or registered domestic partner. Without a surviving spouse or registered domestic partner, all surviving children of the decedent are required to sign off on a cremation authorization. If the decedent has no surviving spouse or children, then the surviving parents will be asked to sign an authorization, and if the parents are deceased, then surviving brothers and sisters will be contacted for signatures. If the legal next of kin does not believe in cremation and will not sign the necessary authorization, then a funeral home will not cremate the body and it will remain in refrigeration. Living with someone for years does not equate to legal next of kin, and that's very important to remember. So, if you want cremation, then put it in your will or print off this cremation authorization on the DVD under forms. Sign it and have someone witness it, then keep it with your critical papers and documents so it's easy to locate when the need arises. To authorize my own cremation today, I would take this form and put the date in the upper right-hand corner. On the line that reads the human remains of, I would fill in my name, Kristen Lord. The next line, who died at, would be left blank. Birth date, I would fill that in. Date of death would be left blank because I haven't died yet. The lower portion of the form, I would sign my name under signature, and then the next line, which reads relationship, I would write self, S-E-L-F. Then I would ask my husband to witness it, or if I wasn't married, I'd probably ask my mother or a girlfriend. Where this form gets complicated is if you haven't signed it before you died, it could be that every one of your children will be requested to sign it. So if you know cremation's for you, print out the form, sign it, be done with it, and then keep it with your crucial paperwork so it's easy to find when a death occurs. Now I'm going to call the same funeral home and ask questions and gather price information for a burial with a simple graveside service.
Cornell Funeral Home, this is Carlene. May I help you?
Yes, I would like to talk with someone about funeral arrangements for a simple graveside service.
Okay, I can answer those questions for you.
Can you tell me? Well, I'm wondering what you charge to do that and what's involved in the service fee.
Okay, our charge for a simple graveside service is $1,895. On top of that, you would have a charge for a casket. Caskets start at $495 and go up in price. And then there'd be charge for certified copies of the death certificate, which the state charges $20 per certified. What that includes is us going to the place of death and making the removal. We would sit down, meet with the family, file all the necessary paperwork with the county to get the necessary permit for the burial. We would coordinate with the cemetery of your choice, setting up the services there. We would dress and place the body into the casket. There would be no embalming on a simple graveside because there would be no viewing. And then that would be the services provided there at the cemetery with our coach and any necessary car to transfer flowers.
Okay. If I decided at a later date that I wanted to add embalming and viewing, how would that change the price?
The charge, if you did a graveside service with, let's say, viewing here prior to the service on the same day or even the night before, it would just be $100 more. So the service fee would go up to $19.95. And then the only difference really in the services would be the viewing time here and then dressing, casketing, and then there would also be cosmetics applied and hair would be done for your viewing time.
Wow, so just $100 more.
Just $100 more, yes.
I guess I'm a little surprised because I've been doing my homework and I often see for, just embalming and makeup, $595. So,
that's other funeral homes charges, but just with us, we just increase it by $100 to go from the simple graveside to the viewing. And even if you did further decided to do a full funeral service along with the graveside service, it would just be $100 more, which would make it $2,095.
How do you keep your prices so low? I'm sorry, I've just done my homework and it seems odd.
Well, we don't have a huge facility, so our overhead may not be as high as other funeral homes. Plus, the owner is just very concerned about being able to offer affordable prices to families so that they're more able to do the type of services that they would like so that it's not priced way out of reach. So it's just a choice by the owner here to be able to serve people well.
If I want to start pricing caskets, and vaults and liners, do you have a website or some printed information that you can send me?
Yes, you could go to our website, which is cornellfuneralhome.com, and we do have caskets listed on that website. Now, the website is sponsored by a company, so unfortunately on the website we can only show that company's product.
Okay.
But we do have a casket price list that I could send out to you, or if you ever wanted to make an appointment and come by here, you could look at our catalog that shows all the different caskets.
Okay.
As far as liners and vaults, prices on those are going to depend on what cemetery you choose. All cemeteries sell their own liners. Some cemeteries sell vaults themselves, or they request us to do so. A vault through us is $795. When you choose to use a vault at a cemetery, again, their opening and closing charges can be different depending on whether you use a liner or a vault. So that would just be something else we'd have to check depending on what cemetery you chose.
Okay, so the $795, I'm sorry, was that for a vault or a liner?
That's for a vault.
Okay. What are liners going for?
Most cemeteries are right around, I think, $535 to $595.
I know up at the National Cemetery they just use liners, so I'm not real
sure. They just use liners, yes. And when you use a National Cemetery, there's no charges at all to the family for cemetery fees.
Just for the casketing and fees for...
Well, for the property, opening and closing, a liner, and a marker are all included in your benefits for being a veteran.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
So all I'm going to have, if we did a burial at National Cemetery, would be the $1,895.
Plus a casket, yes.
Plus a casket. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you send me a general price list or one of those price list things? And then...
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I just need to get your address and your name, and I can mail that out to you along with a brochure.
Okay.
Once you receive that, if you have any further questions, you can just give us a call.
Okay. And if I use your funeral home, how and when am I supposed to take care of paying for the casket? And I mean, can I do it in advance, or should I just
You
have
can do pre-arrangements if you wish to. By doing things in advance, it does guarantee your prices here with us. It would guarantee your service fee and the charge for the product. Cash advances, which would include death certificates, we can't guarantee that price, but you could do things ahead of time. If you come in when the need arises, we would like payment for services prior to the service actually happening at the cemetery. So either when you come in to make the arrangements or just prior to the service date.
Okay. And so if I don't have a life insurance policy, then I should be ready with a check or a credit card.
Or any type of credit card, yes.
Okay. Well, great. You've been really, really helpful.
Okay.
I took your name down earlier, and if I've got other questions, I will give you a call back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlene. I really appreciate your help on all this.
Sure, no problem.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, that wasn't so tough. Although, even though I've had lots of experience calling around, I still get a little bit nervous. So therein lies the importance of having your questions written down in advance and something to write with. So I wish you well in making your 3 phone calls. And now that you've seen it done and you've been given questions, I know that you will be a more informed shopper, and that what you pay for whatever services you decide for yourself, you'll have all the tools that you need to keep as much money as possible in your bank account and not give it to the funeral home. So after talking with that woman, I am going to make an appointment and go to that funeral home and have them list out everything we talked about on the phone. It's called a statement of goods and services, and we'll just move forward as though I'm planning my own direct cremation or my own graveside service. So thanks for hanging in there. I hope this isn't too scary for you. I'm ready to finalize my plans with a funeral director for direct cremation. I made an appointment and drove to the funeral home where I met with the owner, Brian Curnow. I verified the price I was given over the phone and then asked to see the plastic urn included in his basic cremation charge. He did have other urns available, but I told him my husband would be scattering my ashes, so we wouldn't need anything more than the plastic urn. I signed the cremation authorization, and Brian asked me questions while he filled out a death certificate worksheet on my behalf. We left a few spaces blank, like the date of death, county of death, and time of death. Brian took a few minutes and worked up the statement of goods and services. Now I could decide if I wanted to pay for the direct cremation by way of a trust or perhaps an insurance policy. And that completes direct cremation. It took about 20 minutes. I felt calm and in control the whole time. And if I had brought in a signed cremation authorization and a completed death certificate worksheet, I would have been finished in half the time. So if I died in January of 2009, my husband would pay the funeral home about $1,000 for my final arrangements with direct cremation. He would need at least 5 certified copies of my death certificate and most likely would want a modest obituary run in our local paper. The funeral home would help him write the obituary, but the paper charges an extra fee for a photograph and a set fee for each line of text, something to keep in mind the next time you consider writing a lengthy obituary with a photograph. Now it was time to talk with the funeral director about burial. Brian and I talked about my funeral plans. I told him I wanted to keep it simple, no church service, just a simple graveside service with family and a few close friends. I said I had been to the website and looked at caskets online, but Carlene had told me there was another book to look through at the funeral home. Brian showed me the casket book and left the room so I wouldn't feel rushed or pressured. I took about 15 minutes and made my decision, a pretty white metal casket. I was glad that the price was listed on each page. When Brian returned, he asked me questions and completed the death certificate worksheet. Funeral homes gather this information for the Department of Vital Statistics. Vital Statistics completes and certifies copies of the actual death certificate. The questions can feel a little personal, but they are required to be completed to the best of the funeral home's ability. Unlike cremation, burial does not require written authorization. You can bury anyone because, if need be, the body can be exhumed. Next, we talked about outer burial containers. Most cemeteries require the casket be placed into a concrete vault or liner if the casket is going underground. The vault or liner acts as a stabilizing agent for the casket and helps prevent the headstone from settling. I'm going with a concrete liner, which I will purchase from the cemetery. I didn't want viewing or embalming. I didn't want memorial folders or a guest book that friends and family could sign, and if my husband wanted to order flowers for the graveside service, that was something he could do on his own. Brian took a few minutes and worked up the statement of goods and services. I was relieved that the charges were what Carlene had said on the phone, except for the cost of the casket. Now I just needed to decide how I would pay for the burial with simple graveside service. The meeting with Brian took about 45 minutes. I was calm. There were no surprises because I knew what I wanted and had no fear of talking about it. If I wanted a memorial or a traditional funeral service, more time and money would be involved. I would need to view the chapel, select memorial folders and a guest book. I would need a detailed obituary with the time and location of my funeral. If I had pallbearers, I would need to get the information for the funeral director. Scripture, music, and poetry reading selections would need to be made. Other considerations that come with additional charges would be limousine service for my immediate family, whether or not I wanted police escorts, and who would officiate over the service. The list could go on, which is exactly why you should be specific when discussing your funeral requirements with your family or a funeral home. Wow, it feels like we should be done. But now we need to head to the cemetery and collect their charges. A funeral is a 2-part process, with the funeral home charges and the cemetery charges. I met with Terry Reynolds to collect my cemetery charges. Terry works for the City of Puyallup, and the City of Puyallup owns Woodbine Cemetery. Fortunately, Terry had an easy-to-read brochure addressing cemetery costs, and she highlighted charges I could expect to incur. We talked about a simple graveside service for immediate family and close friends. She gave me the setup fee for the tent, crib, chairs, and astroturf, and then charges for opening and closing the grave. Prices are not negotiable, Payment must be made prior to the burial with cash, check, or credit card. There are no payment plans for a burial. If you own property, you will still have funeral home expenses, opening and closing charges, setup charges for a tent and chairs, and eventually charges for a headstone and installation fees. Terry and I returned to the office to look at headstone options. My intention was to keep things simple and affordable. There was an option of a 24 by 12 inch granite marker at a cost of $301 plus tax and an installation charge of $235 plus tax. I decided there was no need to rush a decision for the headstone. Graves require 3 weeks to settle, and occasionally backfilling is required. Terry recommends that families look around the cemetery and make sure they order what they really want, because once it's set in stone, it's set in stone. So let's take a look at my cemetery charges for a burial at Woodbine Cemetery in January of 2009. Property for the burial is $1,395, and that's in the affordable section of the cemetery. Charges to open and close the grave, $720. Grave liner to encase the casket, $535, and a liner is less expensive than a burial vault. Graveside setup, $200, making a grand total with tax of $2,897.08. I did not include a headstone selection. That will be done at a later date, but I know it will be at least $550. Now let's add my cemetery charges to the funeral home expenses. Graveside service, $1,895. Attractive white metal casket, $1,095. Headstone, approximately $550. A modest obituary in a local paper, $200. 5 death certificates, $100, plus tax for a grand total of $6,834. Cost should be a natural consideration when making final arrangements for yourself or someone you love. In my case, I have a choice to make between a burial at about $7,000 and a direct cremation at about $1,000, and that's on the low side of final arrangements. The average service charge for direct cremation in King and Pierce County is $1,500. That does not include death certificate copies or an obituary. Make some phone calls and comparison shop, or prepare to pay a lot more than I will. If you want a burial, be responsible and start your homework today. Like cremation, there are vast swings in price at each funeral home for the same services and products. Funeral home fees are a non-regulated entity. Prices can change at any time. Like most other businesses, prices seem to increase every year. Stop being fearful and get on the phone. Print off the telephone questions and start gathering your price information. Tell your family what kind of arrangements you want, and then put it in writing. If you want to be cremated, authorize it today. Everyone should fill out a death certificate worksheet, whether your plans are for cremation or burial. So what are you waiting for? Go print off your forms and start making smart choices about final arrangements. Talk to your family and friends about this DVD and demystify the death care industry.